What's up guys, it's Drac, and Hasbro's offerings this year have been so incredibly underwhelming that I forgot to review the middle tier blaster. I knew that the Mach 100 was going to be compelling and I would need it for some comparisons, and then it wound up being incredibly underwhelming. Then I knew that I was going to want to play with the Rush 40 because it's the cheapest offering and also the one that was the most compelling, being a high capacity, compact sidearm style blaster. It might have some merit. After watching my buddy Aaron kind of struggle with the Siege-50, I just was super not looking forward to reviewing this one. And there's been enough exciting releases from other manufacturers and even in Soaker World that I've been too busy to come back to it. But I actually kicked it walking in and out of my office recently. And I was like, man, in an attempt to get this out of my office and into a Goodwill near you, I'm going to need to make a review on it, get some honest thoughts. So I'm going to fully reset to neutrality and tell you guys that this is the Siege-50. It's part of a new line from Hasbro, the Hyper line, which is effectively a tiny rubber ball line. Has nothing to do with Nerf effectively, given that it's not shooting foam ammo of any kind. But this is the mid-tier. 40 bucks gets you a pump-action shotgun-style blaster with an integrated hopper and an onboard capacity of 50 rounds. Now, the blaster itself has a 50-round capacity and advertises a 50-round reload canister, which it does not come with. Down here in smaller text, they inform you that the blaster only includes 40 rounds, which just seems cheap to me, but I'll let you guys draw your own conclusion. I can tell you that in my Mach 100 review, they claimed that they were going to send something like 80 rounds with it, and I think I got 6 less or 4 less than that. So don't take it to heart. Maybe you'll get more, maybe you'll get less. It's a lot like ordering chicken nuggets at McDonald's. It seems like every time I get a 6 nugget kids combo thing, I get 5 nuggets or 7 nuggets. It's a real crapshoot. Very rarely do I actually get what I paid for. But back to this blaster, $40 gets you pump action power if you're into this new ammo type, and I don't think that it offers any distinct advantages over rival. While there's more onboard ammo capacity, given that these are smaller and more compact, you get far less consistent chambering, and it seems like the flight paths are far more random, given that these do not have hop-up taps by default, something that we fixed when we were working on our Rush 40. We made a muzzle that specifically improves that blaster. I did not go ahead and do that for the Mach 100, just because I think that that blaster is too expensive for what it is, and it's pretty disappointing in a world where you can still find Percy's some places. So let's go ahead and pull this one out of the package. Take a look inside. Inside the package, you get the blaster itself, you get a little instruction manual, you get your 40 rounds, which maybe will count, who knows. And then you do get included eye protection. Given the small size and relatively high FPS, at least initial velocity-wise, of these, it was wise of Hasbro to include some sort of eye protection. It's just very disappointing that this is the most generic, bland eye protection you could possibly imagine. That said, if you're a multi-billion-dollar company, how are you going to sell people branded eye protection if you give it to them for free? So I'm sure that you'll be able to buy fancy eye protection later on, but in the meantime, I highly recommend using impact-rated sunglasses. Anyway, I think that they look cooler, they work better, and a lot of the branded eyewear is sort of rendered moot by them. All right, guys, so I said I wasn't going to do this, and I don't want to be this guy, and I don't want to be this petty, and I would definitely never like send a customer service request over, 2 pieces of ammo or anything, but it's just a little sad. I guess when the ammo counts are lower, or they're being measured by human hands, it's easier to keep account of this, but I've gone ahead and divided these up into piles, because honestly, it was the best way to measure the capacity. But for a blaster that holds 50 and comes with 40, we got 10, another 10 makes 20, another 10 makes 30, and then interestingly enough, over here, I have, one of them's already got a hair stuck to it, that sort of stinks. I have 8, and with 8, we would be too shy. Now, of course, Hasbro would argue that there's one kind of try-me ball that sits right here in the package, and so that, if I were to pull it out, would put us at 39, and 39 is still not 40, which is like, come on. It's expensive ammo, guys. Over here, you've got a D-prime switch here. This is like in the event of a catastrophic jam, you can use this to release the mechanism inside so that you could try and reset through whatever rubber ball you've rolled over in the breech or pinched in a mechanism. Down in here, you have an actual look at the inside. There's your smallest ever breech hole. And I want to point out, at the point that your jam door can no longer fit a human finger in it, it's not really an effective jam door anymore. You're not really doing anything but satisfying the legal requirement for being able to access that mechanism. Like, that's non-productive. It shows you effectively how this thing's going to load, which is to say that as long as the balls aren't clumped together, and it's leaning forward, you'll be able to prime through here. A tiny mechanism will grab a single ball, and then when you prime back down, it'll drop it down into the breech. Now, it appears that no part of that was impacted by having this open or not, which would normally be a safety hazard, except who cares? You can't fit a human finger in there. Unless, of course, you're a child, which is when you would have to be worried about it anyway. It used to be that you couldn't activate or articulate these mechanisms when the jam doors were open, but now that the jam doors are a formality, who knows? There is a safety mechanism over here, which for a blaster that hits this hard, you theoretically have to have. So there's that, is no fire, and then you can switch it back up there. Now that is, of course, a right hand only mechanism. There's no safety on the left-hand side. So depending upon what hand dominant you are, that's either going to be a very easy to access control switch right there, or it's going to be kind of a pain. Now, I don't know if this blaster has slam fire, but I'm going to go ahead and find out. So we'll hold the trigger down, back, forward, and it does appear to have slam fire, which is actually, for something with this sort of form factor, very, very important. Now, what was that? That was weird. It just didn't chamber once. And this is sort of the thing that I watched Sophie and Aaron really struggle with, is that it appears that if you're not actively agitating and making absolutely certain that the balls are falling in, since they are gravity fed in this hopper, that you have the ability to misfeed. Just as a perfect example, if you happen to be leaning to the side or upside down, nothing's going to happen because it requires, you to be properly engaged in that way. Now, blaster has a sling point attachment down here. It has Picatinny rails here and here. Up here makes sense. Down here only makes sense if you believe this gimmick of buying reload pods that slap onto the blaster. This is exactly the kind of place where as you're crossing your body or moving from a slinged position or not, that this would knock off. So like I would, honestly, if I were ever going to modify this for an HVZ game, which is the only thing that I could think of this being practical for, and it's still up to debate as to whether or not the hyper rounds are going to be allowed at HVZ events, I would take all that Picatinny off to create a smoother surface to interface with my body. But the grip is actually pretty good, and it's time to talk about the aesthetics. I think that the aesthetics of the hyper line are truly where they shine. Not only did Hasbro return to painting both sides of the blaster, but they also really went all out on this kind of carbon fiber-esque finish on the gray deco, which just looks really good with the neon and everything. It definitely feels like a blaster out of the 90s. And, in a world where this is as good as they can get on performance, it's kind of exciting to see them returning to their nostalgic roots with that sort of design and inspiration. Overall, this one kind of goes in the not great, not bad category. It's nowhere near as efficient in terms of its price to performance ratio as the Rush 40, and it's nowhere near as egregious as the Mach 100. It's somewhere in between. However, its hiccups when firing are really inexcusable for a blaster like this. That's the kind of thing that never would have happened in the Rivalverse using magazines that were spring-fed or hoppers that had built-in agitators, which was just big, big game. Now, I understand that, as a company that wants to milk this for as much money as they can, they have to have some amount of planned obsolescence, but there's really no excuse for sending out a blaster that doesn't, work ridiculously well. Also, I'm just now seeing this. On the back here, there's a sticker poorly aligned that says eyewear required. I'm sure that that is a legal requirement, but if it was a last-minute legal requirement, it's upsetting, and if they had known it was going to be there all along, it would have been nice to have it included in the warning text on the blaster so it doesn't look like as much of an afterthought. We'll go put ours over the chronograph now and get you an actual initial velocity reading on this this bad boy, but ergonomically, it's fine. Reliability-wise, it's not so great. Let's go. All right, let's get some numbers. 118 is actually pretty spicy. 117, duplicate 117, 119, can it break 120? All right, let's try a couple of slam fire shots. Well, assuming it loads, and then an error. So I guess that goes to confirm exactly what I was saying, which is if you're willing to marry this ammo type and you're not concerned about hitting what you're aiming at, you can definitely get high FPS numbers, which kind of just confirms my theory that Hasbro took a look at high chronograph numbers and reviews and said they'd like a piece of that action, and that this smaller kind of diameter, denser, rubberized material was the way that they thought was best to get there. But, until there are arenas or some sort of, I guess, reason to use the hyper ammo, it's just something that I don't want anywhere near little J over here. So I can't explicitly endorse this. I'll throw a couple into the woods so that you get an idea of the trajectory pattern. Luckily, the neon nature of them, at least while they're still clean, means that you should be able to pick up on it pretty well. That was pretty straight. And then that one, of course, veered completely off to the right. And it's just, that one veered down. And so it's like, if I'm gonna spend $40 on a primary class blaster, I wanna be able to hit a target 30, 35 feet away. And fortunately, there's lots of blasters out there at a variety of different retailers that'll let you do that for even less money. So this is really like, if you want to buy into the hyper ecosystem, I think that this is the worst of both worlds. It doesn't have the high rate of fire that the Mach 100 does, and it's really not as compact as the Rush 40 is. And with only 10 more balls of extra onboard capacity, you had a lot of bulk for not a lot of extra initial velocity and performance. So I think that this one's actually a hard pass for anyone who isn't buying into this ecosystem. And if you are buying into this ecosystem, I still think you would be better served by Rival. But all the same, I think that this is like the one that you pick up on sale or skip entirely, as it doesn't really fit a role that isn't served better by either of the other two options. A little bit of, I guess, hopeful, wishful thinking here at the end. This is my last review on the Nerf Hyper rollout, and if we judged the entirety of the Rival system by the Zeus and the Apollo alone, that one had a pretty poor Springer offering at first as well. Although I think that the Zeus was pretty compelling in a lot of ways. Really, that was exciting because it was foam flinging in a new form factor. And so we've taken a lot of that excitement and turned it into disappointment with rubber balls that show no like real significant innovation. However, hopefully it gets better. Hasbro doesn't really launch anything without a plan to continue it for at least a 24-month cycle. So over the course of the next year, we should see more hyper blasters. Let's just hope that that the ones that the designers really wanted to work on and not the ones that they were forced to release are a little bit more polished and a little bit better, because the aesthetic is pretty cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you'd like to pick up any of the hyper blasters I've talked about, I'll throw an Amazon affiliate link down in the description box below. I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel. I appreciate your support over on Foam Pro Shop. And if you have picked up a Rush 40, I highly recommend dialing in its accuracy with our muzzle attachment, which will also be linked in the description box down below. Thanks so much for watching. Much love. Blast on. Drac out.